the rest of the story. Deborah Moody was a troublemaker. I mean, a troublemaker. Lady Deborah, we should call her. Her husband was an English baron who died in 1629. In fact, it was almost 10 years after his death that Lady Deborah began making trouble. You see, in those days, English landowners were expected to visit their properties periodically. Lady Deborah refused. Rather than comply with a law which she considered to be in violation of her civil liberties, she refused. Lady Deborah sold her land and in 1639 moved to Massachusetts Bay Colony. But there she made more trouble. This time the issue was religious freedom. The Puritan church in Salem made couples baptize their infants. Lady Deborah said they didn't have to. The town council demanded she repent publicly. Lady Deborah said she didn't have to. So she was excommunicated from the church, from the town, and from the colony. And she left gladly. And she moved south. If, as it seemed, there was no community anywhere that offered the kind of freedoms she required, she was just going to start her own community, and she did. She purchased some property, she named it Gravesend, and invited freethinkers everywhere to join her. Deborah Moody was in her 60s when Dutch colonists let her build the free town of Gravesend, but they were not prepared for everything she had in mind. First of all, the church services. On the door of the Gravesend church, a sign read, quote, Puritan worship at 11 a.m., Separatists at noon, Quakers at 1 p.m. Well, when Peter Stuyvesant heard about that, he became enraged, particularly over the Quakers, whom he greatly disliked. And then he learned, much to his distaste and dismay, that Deborah Moody, a woman, was now actually the mayor of Gravesend. But Peter Stuyvesant lost the shouting match, and because he did, because Deborah Moody was permitted to carry on with her dream of liberty and justice for all, we now know when and where our dream began. Deborah Moody's oasis of social and political and religious freedom was the first such in the New World, just as she was the first woman to cast a vote on the North American continent, the first woman granted a colonial enterprise, the first woman mayor, and the first abolitionist. In fact, Deborah Moody, 133 years before the Declaration of Independence, more than a century before our Declaration of Independence, she declared her own independence and advocated the essentials of the Gravesend Charter. There's one thing more you ought to know. Gravesend, the social and political and religious experiment that did succeed, the American dream community that Deborah Moody made real, is alive and well today. It exists and it is inhabited today. It is no longer called Gravesend. But the next time the subject comes up regarding the birthplace of liberty and justice for all, I hope you will be armed with the correct answer. All of the freedoms that we now treasure and fight for and sometimes die for began in Brooklyn. Now you know the rest of the story.